The Artificial Podcast Shorts.
Looking at a 50,000-foot view, if you're somebody in a very large corporation and your CIO or somebody in a senior level tech role or innovation role comes to you and says, hey, I want to deploy conversational AI or I want to deploy voice technology, I think the first thing that comes to that senior level person's mind is you see Siri, you see Alexa, you see Google Assistant, and because we've all had interactions with them, and again, this isn't trying to bash these platforms in any ways or means, but interacting with them, you know what the limitations are, right? So if you're trying to think from an operational or a business standpoint, if that's, your only experience so far with voice and conversational AI, you immediately start thinking about the immediate limitations of that, right? As opposed to what you said where, you take some of these principles like zero-shot learning into the mix where you have an instantly trained, conversational AI model that can be deployed in a standalone conversational assistant, that unlocks so much more than just Alexa or Google Assistant or Siri, that I think this notion of what people have experienced so far and those immediate limitations that we all have experienced with the current platforms is becoming very much a hindrance to great enterprise adoption, right?
That's crazy, right? And just imagine, look, in conversational AI, just to get concrete, in conversational AI, every single offering out there starts with intents, right?
Which
you haven't heard of a conversational AI that doesn't have intents.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what I mean about this pigeonhole and stagnation stuff. Like, to even think about how you build a system without starting with intents is heresy. It's mad.
Absolutely.
It's madness, right? But if you were to take even that concept out of the window, and the thing is, intents require that you train each of them. You have to specify what the intents are. What can this thing understand from a design standpoint? And then we have to get training data for all your intents and then train each intent. And then you have a bot, right? So that's the intent view of the world. And that's how all conversational AI products that I'm aware of, except for something new that I'm working on, works, right? And so what does that mean? And here's where it gets really gnarly, okay? Check this out. Let's say you want a kind of conversational AI that disperses information. Let's call this class of conversational AI. Let's take a real product need, onboarding, right? You have a new product. You've got to get your users to understand how to use it, to learn how to use it. Or it could be a digital product. It could be like a robot that you just bought or a car or something that you need to figure out. So people need to be onboarded on how to do things. That's a lot of information, right? In an intent view of the world, and that information can change all the time. It can grow, right? You can have hundreds and hundreds of potential interactions, different interactions that need different responses in that system. And so, but let's take this intent model, the way that everything works today. In the intent model, you have to specify all the different kinds of information you can deliver, right? You enumerate them. Let's say you got 20. Then you have to go through a journey of getting the perfect kind of training data for each of the 20 and make sure that the data doesn't conflict across the 20, because if that happens, your AI turns out very stupid. You end up, because you're teaching it. So then you have 20, and then you train it. That's a long process. But get this. Let's say you want to add the 21st intent in this intent world, the way everything works out there. So to add the 21st intent, you have to get some training data for that. So it's a lot of work. But you have to go and review all of the data sets for your other 20 and make sure that they don't collide with the new thing. So the work grows exponentially as you add additional intent. And operationally, your bot gets stupider and stupider just because of this complexity. As you add things, exponential increase in labor required to build a bot. Your bot actually in production gets stupider and stupider over time. The market doesn't businesses don't appreciate this when they're picking an AI vendor and so forth. They're like, yeah, let's get the best conversational AI out there. All of them are intent-based. And then let's do all this magical stuff. I want 4,000 pieces of information about how this product works. In there, go. And every month we're going to be adding new features. So just
because that's the thing. Their mind immediately goes to how we process and consume information, which is an infinite amount, right? So they just expect the technology to do that. But like you just said, with the intent-based structure,
right,
it doesn't work.
Exactly. And that's how the entire market is working. So every new guy or gal that creates a company is going to think about, okay, let's start with our intent system. Now let's make it a little better. But it's fundamentally flawed for the challenge of dispersing new information to onboard people to products. That challenge is in a different class than, say, process automation. So if you want to automate the process of opening a bank account, you might be fine with an intent-based view of the world, right? Because it's one very constrained problem and it's one process. Right. It's one process you want to automate. So once you automate that process, you're good. Process automation bot, let's call it PA bots, right? So, okay, intent might be successful there, but onboarding you to a new product, you can't use a PA bot. You need to use something like an information disbursement. That's an information disbursement problem from a market standpoint. So perhaps for that problem, intents have to be thrown out the window.
Yeah.
You might have to discover or develop a new kind of approach to building conversational AI that isn't training an intent classifier, because it won't be able to scale to the amount of information. And right. And so this is what leads to the confusion and the not understanding about that leads to this kind of stagnation. And here's what's nice. What's nice is this zero-shot learning approach, right? If you develop a technique using deep neural networks that isn't an intent-based approach, you may be able to create something that you do not specify intents. You just take the information and then the virtual assistant builds itself, right? And so, this is something I'm working on. Very, very much so. And, there's a project called Zero Shot Bot, right? Is the project that is concerned with this approach. Let's start with just what is the information, and let's let the bot build itself, right? Let's get intents out of that way. All you do is augment the information, and then the bot, you have your next version of the bot. So you add some new info, and now you have a sophisticated conversational AI that covers that info without training by pushing a button, So that's an example of how this pigeonholing can work and how you might have to crack the mold and realize there's something fundamentally wrong with the approach we're taking to building the technology that is limiting it when it comes to its application for different segments of problems, right? Yeah.
No, that was awesome what you just said there, Jason. Hey there, artificial podcasters. Nick Myers here just to say don't forget to smash the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes and new content. You can also listen to full episodes of the Artificial Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Anchor.fm. If you or someone you know is interested in being a guest on the show, visit us on the web at www.theartificialpodcast.com. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.